So welcome to our webinar that's called Resources for Transition-Aged Youth. This webinar is brought to you by the Family Focused Resource and Empowerment Center. We're a parent center that's based in Northridge on the campus of Cal State University, Northridge. And we have 3 offices that serve families who live in the San Fernando Valley, the Santa Clarita Valley, and the Antelope Valley. And our presenters today are going to be Kathleen Secchi. Do you want to say hello, Kathleen?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm with the Family Focused Resource Center. I'm the coordinator here in the Santa Clarita Valley, and welcome. We're really glad that you could join us.
Yes, thank you. And another guest presenter of ours will be Kleou Rasaei. I hope I said that right. Thank you. Do you want to say hello, Kleou?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Kleou and I am a behavior analyst with Advanced Behavioral Pathways, where I support adults with developmental disabilities in residential homes and adult day programs.
Thank you, Kleou. And my name is Victoria Berrey, and I'm the program manager for the Family Focused Resource Center. I live in Santa Clarita with my 2 adult sons. So transition is something that I'm still in the thick of. And many of the families we work with have young, have teenagers or young adults, or even a little older, and we're all working together to understand transition and all the opportunities and challenges that are entailed. So this presentation isn't so much to tell you how transition works, but we'll talk a little bit about that, but mostly we want to provide a lot of resources for people who are parents or who are educators that work in transition. So right now I'm going to bring up my screen and share it. Okay, and we will get going. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. So we talked about our presenters, myself, Kathleen, and Kleou. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk just very briefly about what is transition to adulthood, what are transition services. Kleou is going to tell us about what skills we should be teaching now for greatest success in adulthood. Then we'll talk a little bit about what's different in the COVID-19 pandemic, what we're all living through right now, and what we can be working on both at home, whether it's through distance learning or just on our own as parents, and in the community. And finally, we'll talk just a little bit about what regional center services are available for people who are in the transition age, and we'll have time for some questions. Now, we do have a couple of ways that people can ask questions. On your screen, on your Zoom program, there should be a little button that says Q&A. You can type questions in there, and we might type in an answer, or we might give the answer to one of our presenters. You can also use the chat box if you just want to make a comment or something like that, and we'll be monitoring those during the presentation. Someone asked, can we have a link to the website? Yes. As soon as I stop talking, I will start typing in those links for you, okay? Okay, so let's move on. So what is transition? The IDEA defines transition as a set of activities that are designed to transition a student from school to their post-school life. Transitions should start, it can start as early as age 14 in the IDEA. I think in California Ed Code it says it should start no later than the age of 16. So transition includes educational activities, classroom activities, and assessments. It also should include community experiences, and those can be things like working, sometimes they call it workability programs, so, or on-the-job training. There should be also experiences for knowing how to navigate the community. It might include some transportation training so people know how to get around, and just knowing what is available in one's own community. It should include some type of employment or pre-employment training, vocational training, and also daily living skills and evaluations to make sure a student is, knows how to do their daily living skills to take care of themselves once they become an adult. And in the IDEA, it specifically says that family involvement is part of the process. So we're glad to have families here so we can all be learning together and being involved in the transition of our students together. Now, if you have a student who has an IEP at school, you know that they still have their IEP, and then once they reach transition age, they also have a companion piece to that, which is called the Individualized Transition Plan, or the ITP. So all these transition activities will be part of the student's ITP. One thing that is usually mentioned in the student's IEP or ITP is noting whether they're on diploma track or certificate track. And what that means is students who are on diploma track are those that are part of the standard curriculum. They're taking the standard A through G classes, English, math, perhaps a foreign language, some electives, science, things like that. And then there's they're expected to graduate with a diploma. And if the students are on an alternate type of curriculum, they are typically called certificate track. So they won't, they'll finish school, but they won't earn all the credits to lead to a diploma. And parents should know whether or not their child is on a diploma track or a certificate track when the transition, is underway. You never want to be surprised at the end of your child's high school career. What do you mean they're not going to get a diploma? That should be something that is discussed and the parent has input in, and you should know which track they're on. And that will impact how long they might be in school. So typically students are in school till 12th grade. They might take some extra classes or summer classes to recover some credits in order to graduate. Students who have an IEP and are on diploma track sometimes take a little longer to finish all their classes. So it's not unusual for a student to have an extra year in high school, maybe a fifth year in high school. It might be a year where they have concurrent enrollment in high school and also are taking some community college classes, and also perhaps still working on some transition goals from their ITP. I had one son who did that. Students who are on certificate track and have not met all the goals on their individualized transition plan can stay in school up until their 22nd birthday. So that might be at the high school, or they might actually be in a transition program that their school district offers. It might be on a different campus, for example. In LA Unified, there are some schools that are called Career Transition Centers, CTCs, and that students are on those campuses. So it all depends on what high school district your student is part of. And that's part of the transition process when the parent and the student need to find out what options are available to them after the student completes high school, completes their, their 12th grade year. And also, what are the students' interests and the students' strengths? College is not necessarily for everybody. Some students want to go to college, some students do not. They might want to go straight into work or some other type of program where they might be out in the community volunteering and doing things that are suited to their strengths. So those are some of the considerations that parents and students will go through during the transition process. And now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to hand it over to Kleou. And Kleou is going to talk about I love her title here, Adulting Like a Pro, important skills that we can start teaching students now.
Hello, everyone. So as I said before, I'm Kleou and I'm a behavior analyst supporting adults with developmental disabilities in residential homes and day programs. And today I am going to be talking about adulting and the important skills that you can start teaching now to ensure a smooth transition to adulthood, just based on my experience working in the field. Being an adult is very hard and the struggle is definitely real. So the sooner that we start working on the important skills we need as adults, the easier it will be to transition into adulthood. And to be able to practice, starting sooner also means that we have more opportunities to practice the skills with the support of caregivers. And one thing to keep in mind is that your baby is not a baby anymore and they can do it. So to be able to practice, we need to trust that the individual is capable. So while it may be tempting to do things for someone who might be taking a little more time to complete a task or might be having some difficulties, it's crucial that we give them time and prompt them through the task rather than completing the task for them, because doing it for them is robbing them of the opportunity to learn. So next slide.
I'm trying. Hold on here a minute. Here we go. It just takes a while.
Perfect. So some of the topics we're going to cover today are important skills that we need to teach, leisurely activities and why they're important, self-advocacy, and teaching individuals to care for their living space, and then finally making choices.
I'm trying, Kleou.
No problem.
No, it's not responding right away.
Also, I just finished my second cup of coffee for the day, so if I speak very quickly, that's why I'm going to try to slow down, but I can't make any promises.
I'm sorry, I'm having, I can't get it to advance. Help, someone give me a, okay.
You want me to pull it up on my
Yeah, maybe I
screen
should.
and then I can
Oh, wait,
share it?
here we go. All right. I think I just got it to move ahead. Okay, I think this is your next one, Kleou.
Okay, Perfect. So while there are many skills that adults need, these are the 4 very important ones that we should start teaching immediately if we haven't already. The first one is toileting. A person who is not toilet trained is going to be very limited. They're going to have very limited options, including the types of day programs that they can attend. And they're at a much higher risk of abuse. So we should be getting people as independent in toileting as possible. Does the person know how to initiate using the restroom? When they're in the restroom, can they complete all the steps associated with using the restroom? And if not, then we need to break down each task and teach it one step at a time. If they're unable to complete tasks associated with toileting because of limitations in mobility, it's important that we teach them to at least initiate when they need to use the restroom or to notify someone when they have an accident and need assistance. Other skills to teach include discriminating between which restrooms to use when in public, how to locate a restroom, so asking associates at a store where the restrooms are, making sure to check for certain things like there's toilet paper before they use the restroom, and then skills associated with menstruation. For those who do need assistance with toileting, it's also really important that we teach them what is and is not appropriate when somebody is helping them in order to make sure that we are able to prevent any type of abuse. And next is communication. So does the individual know how to communicate their internal states and emotions or their wants? So can they say that they're hurt or hungry, sad, bored? If not, then we need to practice teaching these important communication skills by taking advantage of all the opportunities that arise. So for example, if the individual starts crying, then we should prompt them to say that they're sad. Before serving dinner, prompt them to say that they're hungry rather than just giving them the food. And this is really important because I worked with an adult who had broken his arm, and staff had no idea for hours. This individual had a broken arm, and the only reason they realized is because they saw that he was holding his arm, and when they went to touch it, he, started yelling because he was in pain. And because he wasn't able to communicate that he had broken his arm, they had no idea, and they weren't able, or they didn't get to it as quickly as they should have. So we really want to make sure that we're taking advantage of all these opportunities to be able to express themselves, and that we are rewarding these instances of communication just to increase the likelihood that they'll continue to occur in the future. Next, we want to teach safety skills. So, that includes navigating the community, teaching them the different bus routes that they can take if they are going to be taking the bus, how to use Uber and Lyft apps, driving in the community, how to cross the street safely, being able to identify different community signs and what they mean. Also, increasing tolerance of certain items, sounds, and places in the community. We want to have discussions about relationship, physical, and sexual safety, bullying, and money and workplace safety as well. Also, we want to teach them safety skills within the home, such as making sure that the doors are locked, making sure that they're checking the thermostat, that the stove is off. These are all important skills that we need to be actively teaching. And then finally, mobility. So with students, when they're in school, they're sitting most of the day, and they're not prepared for moving about in the community or working, which a lot of jobs do require that you stand for extended periods of time or, walk around. So this is a major barrier to community participation and employment for adults transitioning from high school. And it's common that adults transitioning from high school are not able to stand or move about the way that work or community integration requires. So mobility also refers to the person's ability to move about the community safely, including walking next to staff. And this is something that schools should be working on, but often don't because they are on gated campuses. Students often move about by running from place to place and never learn to walk next to staff or in a group, which then can put them in danger when they are out in the community as adults. Next. Okay, so now we're going to be discussing leisurely activities and their importance. We don't want to use the same boring activities over and over again. We really want to work on expanding the person's repertoire of leisurely activities by exposing them to more things. Even if the person is perfectly fine sitting and working on a puzzle all day, every day, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to expose them to other things. You might end up finding something that they develop a passion for. So for example, I know, one of my colleagues, Michelle, her son was exposed to playing the guitar and ended up really loving it. And had he not tried it, he might have never found that passion. I provide support to adults in residential facilities, and many of the challenging behaviors that I observe are a result of the person being unengaged. So keeping a person occupied in a preferred leisurely activity during free time can help reduce these challenging behaviors. It can also help keep certain skills sharp. So for example, playing board games with others can help the person maintain social skills like sportsmanship, waiting for their turn, taking turns. Crocheting can help maintain fine motor skills. Playing basketball can help maintain those gross motor skills. Reading can help maintain different cognitive skills. And it also increases their quality of life by keeping a person engaged in enjoyable activities. They stay happy. And the adults I've worked with frequently complain about being bored or having nothing to do. They spend a lot of their time watching television, and even then, they're just sitting in front of a TV but are not actively engaged in what's on the screen. They'll just be staring off into space or staring at a wall. And it's not because they don't want to do anything, but it's because nothing else is offered and they don't initiate doing other leisurely activities independently. So if you could go on to the next slide. One of the things that I've used are activity menus, which are visuals, and it's exactly what it sounds like, which is a menu of different activities that are available to the person. So this is nice because it includes activities that might not be right in front of them, like feeding ducks at a pond. And it just helps them know everything that's available and gives them more options to select from. And that's better than just waiting around and hoping that they're just going to initiate and think of an activity on their own. So I found activity menus to be really helpful. Next, we're going to discuss self-advocacy. So what we want to do is make sure we're explaining the things that are and are not okay to ensure that the individual knows when they are being mistreated or treated unfairly. These are also great opportunities to practice by role-playing and modeling certain situations. That way, you can provide feedback to the young adult or teenager on what they should be doing, showing them what they should be doing, and they can practice it so that if they ever do encounter that situation, they'll at least know what to do. You also want to make sure that they're aware of their rights. So review the Lanternman Act and teach them to verbalize that to others. I have seen numerous times in some of the homes that I support, clients' rights being violated, and this includes, sometimes staff might withhold food like cake. I had a client who was an adult in his 40s and wanted a piece of cake, a second slice of cake, and I said, no, you can have it tomorrow, which resulted in some pretty severe maladaptive behaviors, which rightfully so. But sometimes when you're not aware of your rights, you won't advocate for yourself. So it's really important to review rights with the person and teach them how to stand up for themselves and advocate for themselves. You also want to tell them who they need to contact if they are treated poorly or if their rights are being violated. Make yourself a safe person to contact. If they approach you with a sensitive topic, you want to make sure that you're calm, supportive, and that you listen. And then finally, you can fill out a health profile. So Victoria, if you want to just pull that up.
Sure. I'm going to bring it up right now.
Thank you.
This is something that was provided by the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Recently, it's a one-page document that anybody can fill out that tells a little bit about the individual. So in this case, the young person, with what they like, what their medical issues are, information that they would need if they need help. So this is, it has a place to put their name, someone can help them add a photo, information, important people, doctors, people they trust, how they communicate, emergency contacts. This all came about because of the COVID-19 crisis, of course, and how we're all wanting people to be able to get the help they need if they have to go to a hospital, but really it's good anytime. Their medications, people should know what medications they take, diet, self-expression. It's a really great document, and this is linked on that resource list that we provided to go along with this webinar, and I put the link to that in our chat box earlier today, and I'll put it in again. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the presentation. Oops.
We also had a question from Miriam. Where do I find something like a checklist of things that need to be done or should be done around the 18th birthday? And she needs to leave about 3:50 today.
I don't have anything that I know of. Victoria, do you?
Well, there is a checklist on the resource list that I just talked about. There's a checklist there. The California Bar Association used to publish a document called When You Turn 18. I went and looked for it, and I found that it's no longer on their website. So for some reason they took it down, or maybe it needs to be updated. But I think you should start with that checklist that's on our resource list. There are just a couple of things off the top of my head. If the person in your life is male, they do need to sign up with selective service within, I think within 3 months of their 18th birthday, even if they have a disability. And of course, registering to vote is very important, and getting some sort of identification, whether it's a driver's license or a California ID card, an official state ID. Very important to have by the time someone turns 18.
Perfect. So next slide. We definitely want to make sure to teach teach students to care for their living space. And the best way to teach these daily living skills is to practice them daily. And these include making their bed, sweeping, setting the table, taking out the trash, wiping the counters, again, making sure that the door is locked at night, making sure that all the burners are off on the stove. And what you can do is think about all of the things that you do in a day, and think about all the things you do for your teenager or young adult and start having them do it. Start teaching them to do it themselves. Because again, like I said, the sooner they practice, the easier it will be. So we can go to the next one. And one of the most important rights we have as adults is the right to make choices. However, some of the adults with disabilities never learn how to make choices. So this is something that we should actively be teaching. You want to maximize the opportunities to make choices. Think about all the choices that you get to make in a day, including who you get to spend your time with, how you get to spend your time, what clothes you get to wear that day, the order in which you put your clothes on, what you get to eat in a day. These are all choices that that adults should be making. So we want to make sure we're teaching them to make these choices and providing them with the opportunities to make these choices. And research shows that making choices actually reduces challenging behaviors and gives the person some more control over their lives. I notice in these residential homes that I support, the adults, I mean, who are, like I said, in their 40s, 60s, 70s, aren't able to make simple choices that we get to make every day. So we want to make sure that we are definitely teaching that to the students.
Yes. Okay.
And so one last thing is just making sure that you self-reflect and you ask yourself always what more is possible. Even if you have a young adult who is very, very independent, there's always more that we can be teaching, always more that we could be learning, all of us. So always ask yourself what more is possible and how we can help this person become even more independent.
Thank you, Kleou.
And that's it. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys.
Thank you so much, Kleou. I think those are some really important things for us all to remember, no matter how old the person in our life is. Whoops. Gonna get back here. And we're gonna move forward to Kathleen's. Oh no, I'm gonna talk a little bit about this. What is different right now during COVID-19? Well, of course, we all know that students who are still in school, they're back to school, but it's all virtual. It's distance learning, and that has its own set of challenges. And for transition-aged youth who are learning how to navigate their community and be more independent, this presents a lot of challenges. So they're doing distance learning, but there's no in-person job training. Most places are not having volunteers come to their sites right now. For example, my son, who's in a transition program, he used to volunteer at the library. Well, libraries are still open, but they're not having volunteers come in. Some of the things that youth do in their transition programs might include cooking. They can't do the cooking in the classroom. They can't do traditional transportation training by getting on a bus together and going somewhere and figuring out how to get there. So some creativity is necessary, and supplementing things at home, I think, is necessary for the students to get all the skills that they are building during this time. And now we're going to move into a lot of ideas and resources for how to do those things. And Kathleen is going to start by talking about some pre-employment skills.
Okay, so yeah, these are some things that can be worked on at home. Practice typing. So Typing Club is one option that you can find online to practice typing, practicing speed, accuracy, you know, just skills, just kind of working your way up and slowly improving those skills. Maybe starting from the beginning, depends on where you at. The nice thing is that these options have sort of an assessment, so they can see where you're starting from and kind of go from there. So it's nice. You can find potentially safe volunteer opportunities. So actually I can't see part of that. Minimize this. There we go. So neighborhood cleanup, things like that, doing things, in your community, in your local neighborhoods, providing a food drive. We know that, food insecurity is really a big deal right now. So that's something that would be very valuable and sort of inspiring and empowering. And helping out a neighbor. Helping them out, it could mean, doing a little yard work for them, something that you can do from a distance. Right now, of course, very early in the morning, it's pretty warm, but things like that. Even just saying, if it's an elderly neighbor, taking their trash cans out for them and putting them back when it's the day for a trash pickup, those kinds of things. There's a lot of different things that you can come up with. Career exploration. So there are some great sites for that. Explore Work is one of them, and they provide opportunities to explore different careers and provide educational components. Road Trip Nation also has something similar in that. Oh,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. We can move on. But yeah, Road Trip has something similar, and you can go in and really look at all the things that they have once you create a login, and you can move around through their websites. They're very useful and pretty interesting. I did notice in a lot of cases, those really are very valuable to, a lot of teens and adults, whether they have, a disability or not. So some other transition activities related to employment that you can try at home. So resume writing and practicing job applications. There are some sites that can help with resume writing. Uh-oh, okay, I think we're okay.
This is where you were, yeah.
Yeah, this is where I was. So yeah, there's different options for that. There are templates online for resumes, templates in Word, and then researching employers and jobs at different sites like Glassdoor and LinkedIn. There are a number of them. There's Monster, there's ZipRecruiter, there's a lot of them. And creating a LinkedIn account is really important. That's something that can really assist when job searching, putting settings in there and parameters to be alerted about jobs, helping people find you or your teen or adult looking for a job, applying for the Department of Rehabilitation Services if you haven't yet done that. That can be really useful in terms of employment services and training and those kinds of things. Linking up with America's Job Centers of California, somewhat of a well-kept secret. Not everybody is really even aware that we have those all over California. Here locally in Santa Clarita, we have an office. Ours in particular is part of Goodwill. But again, they're all over, and this website, will help you locate one in your area and also give you more information about the Employment Development Department. They work side by side. Some of the sites at the America's Job Centers have a person there on site who is part of the EDD. I don't believe that Santa Clarita does right now, but they're somebody that you can definitely give a call for someone who's having issues with unemployment and unemployment insurance and all of those things. So they're a great resource. They provide job training, resume help, mock interviews, of course, job searches, referrals to other services and partners in the community, like the Department of Rehab, for example. They do work closely with those partners. Next. Okay, so some transition activities regarding education. We know even prior to the pandemic, there were options for online classes. So there are community colleges. College of the Canyons has, for example, they are in Santa Clarita, but we do see that a lot of folks access our local college, other Pasadena Community College, but you know, sometimes there are also career skills courses that are offered that are free and can be taken repeatedly, and they are, of course, online. Coursera has a lot of courses, and they have a variety of ways to access them in terms of what you're looking for, what you want to accomplish. So that's really helpful. And looking into college programs, there's a lot of different college programs that offer different kinds of, you know, certificate programs, 2-year programs, you know, just a lot of different inclusive options, which is really important. You know, Think College is one of them. CSUN Explorers program, that's a 2-year program. We have the Nexus and GAP programs, which are actually vendored programs through the Regional Center. So they have college to career programs. They have several pathways depending on what is a good fit and what's appropriate. Sometimes there's a pathway that might be taken in order to build up skills to then move into a different pathway with those programs. And they are serving the San Fernando Valley. Nexus also serves the Santa Clarita Valley and works on campus at COC in a number of colleges, including CSUN. GAP serves the San Fernando Valley and West Los Angeles, also are serving individuals on campus. Right now, they're going to serve them. Obviously, that's going to look different, but they are still being supported. I think, is this me still, or is this you, Victoria?
I can talk about it if you'd like. Okay, so as far as the independent living part of transition, money management is typically a big component, a big learning component for students who are in transition programs. They need to know how to count money. They need to know how to pay for things, how to expect change back. Sometimes that's a challenge for our students. They might give someone the money and then they'll just take their item and leave and not get the change back. I experienced that with one of my sons. I sent him to his transition program. He had his wallet, he had his debit card, but the teacher said, no, we really want them to use cash because we want them to get familiar with using cash. So learning how to count money, pay for things, and make change. And then there's the whole financial literacy part. You know, what is a debit card? What is a savings account? What does it mean to carry debt on a credit card? What's rent, car payments? So there are a lot of great tools that we found. We included them in the resource list, and understanding how much things cost. That's another thing that I guess everyone has to learn. You know, how much should you expect to pay for something at the store, so that you have realistic expectations. And that's something that a lot of transition programs do when they go out on their community trips, their community-based instruction. If they're not doing that right now, maybe we as parents can add some of that into our home life to make sure that the student is getting that education. Here are some resources. Every student needs to have their own wallet. They need to have some sort of bank account. Check into what kind of bank accounts are offered through your own financial institution. For example, I'm with a credit union, and I learned that they offer free accounts to students when a parent has an account at their bank. If you are comfortable with the child using their own bank account, there's something called a green light card. And this is a non-bank card. It works like a debit card. You set up an account online and you load it with some money. You prepay some money. And then the student gets to use it like a debit card, but they can't overdraw the account. It's all prepaid. And the parent gets some tools. They get to monitor the student's spending, and they can create a chore list and link that money to completing the chores. So I thought that was kind of a great option. There are some websites that have some really wonderful free free tools. There's one called themint.com. There's a site called Practical Money Skills, and Sense and Sensibility. Sense and Sensibility is especially designed for individuals with disabilities, and it has multiple chapters with lots of lessons on financial literacy and understanding spending and what it means to go into debt and so on. The Mint and Practical Money Skills, I think, are websites designed for everybody, and they have lessons for young students, for teenagers, and even graduate students or people who are out on their own. I'm looking at a question. Robert wants to know if we're going to provide us with a copy of the presentation. Yes, Robert, it's up on our website, and I provided a link up above in the chat. It's the one that says, let's see, maybe Kathy can type it in again, but it's on our webinars page. So it's there, and I'll do it again when we get into questions at the end. Okay, so more independent living skills. Learning how to shop and prepare food is a big part of adulting, and there's typically this type of activity as part of a transition program. So as far as pre-cooking or cooking, I think even for children who are younger or people who don't have cooking skills yet, it's good to develop a set of snacks or easy meals that your young person can make independently. So it might be a quesadilla with shredded cheese. It might be, carrot sticks and ranch dressing. It might be some pretzels and peanut butter. I don't know. So just things that students can go to and make independently without getting help. And then try new recipes, things that they might want to cook. We watch TV and get ideas for recipes. Planning a meal and then going out to the grocery store to buy those ingredients and cook it is a great activity because it involves planning, it involves budgeting, it involves going through the store and finding all the ingredients and then doing the cooking. Of course, doing that kind of comparison shopping, which is a big part of transition, is a little difficult right now. So one thing that I've seen some people do during distance learning is using grocery store websites or grocery store apps to do the comparison shopping. Compare the prices at Walmart versus Ralph's or Albertsons. That's the way you can adapt it for distance learning. Here are some fun sites that I found. If you go on YouTube and search for cookability, there's a man in somewhere in the UK, and he has a lot of videos with some lessons for doing simple meals. Some of the meals are kind of geared to Britain, like there's toad in a hole and things like that, but there's some other things like spaghetti. And then Accessible Chef was a really great website that has visual recipes. So it uses a lot of pictures. So if someone has a little bit more trouble with reading the directions, it has a lot of step-by-step things. And they had some resources there for pre-cooking skills, like using knives and doing your meal prep, and then also cooking skills. And also a recipe template, so you can make your own recipes. You can adapt your own recipes to this visual format. So I really liked that site. We had a few ideas about other things you could do at home to help, someone with their adulting. One of my coworkers said, "Oh, I think watching the show The Price is Right is a great activity to try to figure out how much things cost." Because, on The Price is Right, you have to guess, how much is a gallon of milk and how much is, bread and things like that. Browsing grocery store websites or apps is a good activity. If someone wants to make money right now, maybe you have some things around the house that you can work with your teen or young adult, figure out how to list it for sale. If you have some old things around that you don't need anymore, have them figure out how to list it, take a picture of it, and then they get to keep the money. If your young person doesn't have a bank account yet, I think opening a bank account is a good idea, or something called a CalAble account. ABLE accounts have been around for a couple of years. They are tax advantaged savings accounts for people, similar to a 529 account that sometimes parents set up for their kids to save for college. But an ABLE account, or in California it's called a CalAble account, doesn't have to be used for college. It's to be used for adult services. So anything that's a qualified expense you can pay for with an ABLE account. That could be supplementing someone's rent, supplementing, buying them food, medical expenses, transportation costs, things of that nature. So the great thing about ABLE accounts is it doesn't impact someone's ability to qualify for public benefits like SSI or Medi-Cal. So there's a lot of requirements around it. Each person can only have one ABLE account. They have to be a person with a qualifying disability. But me, as a parent, I can open an ABLE account to benefit my child. I send in some paperwork to indicate that they have a qualifying disability, and then we can fund that account just like we would fund a savings account, and it will grow, it will gain interest, and you can make withdrawals at any time as long as they're for qualified expenses, and it won't count towards someone's countable resources if they happen to be on SSI or Medi-Cal. There's something about CalAble accounts in our resource list. A couple other fun ideas to get someone interested in cooking. If mom or dad do all the cooking, the child might not want to do the cooking, but get them a little interested in it. Watch shows like Top Chef Junior, get them interested in it. Do some online grocery shopping. A lot of the grocery stores have apps now and free grocery store pickup, which I think is a good way to go right now. So we don't have to go into those stores. We can do all our comparison shopping, make our lists, and pay online and then pick it up. If someone wants to practice cooking, make something for a neighbor, make something for the first responders at the fire station down the street, and take it over there. Other things that we can practice with our young people is teaching them how to do things like fill their own prescriptions or make their own doctor's appointments. And some of these things you can do with apps as well. With my son, we call doing our chores adulting. Somehow it's more interesting to him when we say, well, it's time for us to do our adulting. You want to learn to be independent, right? Yes. So he does all his chores. And that's been helpful at my house. We talked a little bit about transportation and how knowing how to get around independently is a very important skill. Right now, I don't want my child to go on public transportation, but we can still do some things like study transportation routes, figure out how to use buses, trains. There are some really great apps. One that I really like is called Transit. There's another one called Move It. Transit works no matter where you go. So it will work where we live, and it'll work all over Southern California, and even if we go out of state, it works. You can even plan a virtual trip. How would we get to downtown Los Angeles if we wanted to go there right now? Set up Uber or Lyft on your your young person's phone so that they will learn how to do that. Although this might not be the best week for that, because I think I just read that Lyft is pulling out of California effective today because of AB5. Hopefully they'll get that resolved, because Uber and Lyft are really important for people with disabilities who don't yet know how to drive or will not drive. And then studying the DMV handbook if driving is potentially in your young person's future. Since they changed the way they administer tests a few years ago, they don't give you the written test that has 20 questions. You take it on a screen at the DMV and they randomize the questions. There are many, many more potential questions that someone will be asked when they go in to take the written test. So if someone's going to, potentially get their driver's license, they have to do a bit more studying. That's what I've found. And those are all good things to do.
There's also the DMV has great videos. They have some really nice videos that can be, and they're pretty short and they can be watched, repeatedly, but that visual aspect is certainly helpful. I wanted to mention that Robert had a question. Do you recommend to follow this guide even for a more limited person? I see that most of the recommendations are to be applied to a much higher functioning person than the one I care for. Thank you.
Well, Robert, that's, I think we've provided a lot of different resources and suggestions here. We don't really recommend that everyone try everything. I think you can look through all of these and pull out the ones that might apply to the person that you care for. And then going back to the beginning of our webinar where Kleou talked about the most important skills for people when they become adults, to keep those in mind. Having a communication method, learning to use a communication method. Toileting skills are important for someone to be as independent as they can be, and not to be limited in the types of activities that they can have in the future. And there were some other ones that I'm not remembering right at this second, but at the beginning of our presentation, she talked about some of those things.
I think she mentioned some safety measures too that were a priority, and walking next to staff and those kinds of things.
Yeah, safety, mobility, even if you don't know how to read the transit schedule yourself, just knowing how to get on and off a bus safely, knowing that how to pull out your tap card if you ride the bus. There's a free transit pass that you can get, how to get your tap card. For my son, I used to he would keep it in a lanyard and he would wear it so he just taps it when he gets on the bus. You don't want people to have to stop and pull something out of their wallet every time they get on or off a bus, for example. Just keeping things as simple as possible.
Well, speaking of cards, earlier in the presentation, Michelle had written a comment, I don't know if we mentioned it, about in regards to ID cards, when we mentioned those, of practicing presenting those ID cards, when it's appropriate, how to present it, and just sort of, role playing and practicing that.
Yeah, that is an important skill. With our young people, showing people their ID and understanding, this, you can show someone your ID card. Don't show them your, don't show them if they happen to have a social security card, that's private. Don't show someone your bank account information, maybe talking about some of these things. Lena just typed in how to properly interact with law enforcement. That's a really good point, Lena, and it's probably more than we can get into in this webinar, but we've actually been talking very recently about trying to schedule some sort of webinar about safe interactions with law enforcement. Very important for all of us. And I also want to respond to someone, Rochelle asked, where can we access the Sense and Sensibility resource book? It's listed on the resource list that I'll put in the link again, but we put that up on our website. So let me just get to, I think we just have one or two more slides. I wanted to talk for just a second about regional center funded services. So school districts are responsible for transition activities while a student is still in school. So that is typical, you know, it can be, I think it's up to the age of 22. And actually legislation changed several years ago that said regional centers cannot provide certain services to consumers, regional center consumers, until they're 22. And that's because the school districts are responsible for providing a lot of those services at that time. So the types of services that students often get through regional centers while they're still in school are things like adaptive skills training, social skills classes, and community integration. That's not to say that they can't get other services too. This is just a short list of some common services. Other services that people might get after they turn 22 might be funding to attend a day program, which is a program that someone would attend after they leave school. It's not a job, it's not an employment program, but it's a set of activities that someone goes to on, you know, typically a Monday through Friday basis, sometimes like 8 to 2 p.m., 8 to 3 p.m. And day programs vary. There's usually a lot of community access in a day program. It might involve volunteering at several different sites in the community, or going to the library one day a week, or going on a trip somewhere, a more, you know, fun type of trip. Of course, a lot of these things aren't happening right now during COVID-19. Day programs have been closed since March 19th. And I think there's a DDS directive that they're going to stay closed, I think, through the end of August. And that may or may not be extended after that. It depends on what's happening throughout our state in COVID-19. But there are day programs. There's also a service called ILS, which is Independent Living Services. That's where someone can come teach some skills to the person so that they can do a lot of these life skills independently at home. That's whether or not they live at home with their family or in their own place, a shared apartment, for example. Things like cooking and laundry and cleaning, bill paying. Supported living services is another service that can begin when someone is 22. That would be, you know, teaching them skills and helping someone at the house, maybe helping them with their transportation, getting to their job or getting to their leisure activity. And then employment services. And employment services are usually coordinated between the Department of Rehabilitation and the regional center, if someone is a regional center consumer. So again, this is not an exhaustive list. These are just some things that happen in the community, and you should check with the consumer's service coordinator to find out what's available to them in their area, what programs exist, and so on. I wanted to also say that we usually have more transition-related webinars or meetings or conferences even in the spring. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen in spring of 2021, but we hope to have more information available about transition in future webinars. Does anyone, have we had any more questions since then? I don't think we have. Does anyone have any other questions or comments that they'd like to make? I will type in the link to that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's okay. Then I'll type in the links to the transition list, the resource list that has links to all these different things that we've been talking about. There it is. And now I'm going to put in a link to the presentation that you can, it's pretty big, so it's too big to email, but you can download it, save it to your computer or your device. Okay. So those are the two links right there. Did I just put in the same link? I think I did. Okay, I have to put in presentation again. Well, I think this is, okay, no, that is the presentation. Okay, I'd like to invite everybody to visit our website. If you have any more questions, if you want to see any of the other webinars we've been doing since April, we have them all up there. Robert asked the question, do you provide seminars about conservatorship? Yes, we usually do. We haven't for a while because there was a time when the courthouses were closed and people couldn't file for conservatorship. And the agency that we usually refer people to was not providing in-person services. We've found out that now they are providing help for people via email or via Zoom. So I'll type in the name of that agency. It's called Betzedek, and their website is here, betzedek.org. Don't call them on the telephone. They say, send us an email and they will respond, because all their staff and their volunteer attorneys are working remotely. But I also want to invite everybody to follow our Facebook page, because we post a lot of information there. Every day we put stuff down there about all the workshops and meetings that we have, as well as a lot of things going on in the community. In fact, earlier today, I posted something from Betzedek that talked about how people can file for conservatorship from home. So you download some files, you fill out some forms, and you can send them the forms electronically, I think. So, you know, conservatorship is something that a lot of parents choose to do with their children when they turn 18. It's not required. Some people think that it's a requirement. It is not. So there are, you know, some people don't need conservatorship. They might just need a parent or some trusted people to help them with decision making. But others do need the protections of conservatorship. So I think that, unless we have any other questions, I think that about does it for our webinar. Is there an option? Why is there not an option to save what's in the chat room? I don't know. I do not know. Maybe that was a setting that I have to change in the webinar. I apologize for that. I don't know why there's not that option. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Robert, George, Veronica, Elvie, Lena, all of our participants. Michelle,
Jennifer, Aline.
all of you. Thanks for spending part of our hot afternoon in here. And we hope you all stay safe, and we hope we'll see you again. I'll send an email out after this webinar to everyone who registered that will have some of the links that we provided. Okay?
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.